Welcome to This Week in Heresy, episode 73, Paganism and Shinto, with our guest via Skype, Megan Manson. Hey Megan, welcome to This Week in Heresy.
Hello.
For the sake of our audience, can you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so my name's Megan. I'm from the UK. So I've had a connection with Japan for a very long time. I studied Japanese at university, and since then I've mainly worked in the field of Japanese language and cultural relations. And then fairly recently, partly from that, I started getting interested in Shinto, which is the indigenous religion of Japan. And that sort of combined with my interest in paganism as well. So now I sort of practice the two together.
What got you interested in Shinto?
Funnily enough, I really only got massively into it when I came back to the UK after working in Japan for about 2 years. While I was in Japan, I did see a lot of Shinto shrines, went to a lot of festivals, and that did leave an impression on me. I thought, this is wonderful. And then when I came back to the UK, I got involved mainly through a friend with a local pagan group. And from that, it's just seemed to all fall together. I realised there was something in Shinto that I could bring to paganism, and there was something in paganism that could combine with Shinto. And it just hit me quite suddenly that that's what I really, really wanted to do, was combine these two paths.
Mm-hmm. So can you explain what Shinto is for people who wouldn't know or understand what that is? I mean, I have a little idea because I'm a huge Japanophile myself, anime, I love anime, and anime is kind of the gateway drug, but I've read a lot of history, and I watch a bunch of YouTubers who live in Japan, and it's just like, and one of these days, like my wife just got a job at Google, and I told her that if she ever go to the Japan's offices, she's taking me no matter what.
You've really got to go, seriously.
Yeah.
So the first thing to know about Japan is that there's two main religions which work syncretically with each other. There's Shinto and Buddhism. So Buddhism, as you probably know, it doesn't really originate from Japan. It's originally from India and came to Japan via China. So it's almost, even though that was a very long time ago, it's still regarded as a little bit of a foreign religion, whilst Shinto is very much regarded as the indigenous religion. Mm-hmm. And I would say that Buddhism and Shinto are about as different as paganism and Christianity. So with Buddhism, you have a doctrine that was taught by the Buddha Siddhartha, and it's actually based on texts which came from India, and Sanskrit got translated into Chinese, yada yada, and then came to Japan, and it's the teachings of a person. Shinto is a lot more like paganism in a way, and it's something that's grown up very much among the community. A lot of the time, it's a lot of people call it animistic because there is the belief in spirits called the kami, which can inhabit various things in nature and man-made creations as well. In Japan, you probably won't meet anyone who actually says, yes, I practice Shinto, but they probably do on a personal level. They'll probably go to festivals, they'll probably go to shrines, and they want to pray for something. I think the statistic I saw was 80% of Japanese practice Shinto, even though they don't say they do. So yeah, it's I think that's basically it in a nutshell.
Right. Well, I mean, I've done some I did some paper in seminary actually about the religions of Japan and how it's not really part of the identity the same way as it is in the Western countries. It's like it is and it isn't. Like it's not. It's not like I'm a pagan, and there's not
true.
that kind of
That's
thing.
True. Shinto occupies a very interesting place because it is so much a part of Japanese identity, to the extent at which I would say that that's why the Japanese don't really see it as being a religion. It's very often it's called the essence of Japaneseness is very much in Shinto. So a lot of the things we associate with Japanese culture, for example, the focus on ritual, which we'll see everywhere in Japan, has a big link with Shinto. The emphasis on newness and cleanliness, that's all in Shinto. So very often, I think the Japanese do have it as part of their identity, but you're right, they won't say, "Well, I'm a Shintoist." I think it's similar in the UK, in which people don't like to talk about their religions too much very often. It's something that's we prefer to. It's a personal thing. So yeah.
I also thought it was interesting because I did a lot of multi-faith work because, I'm Wiccan and Christian, and, a lot of people just don't understand. Yeah. And,
So you know what it's like to sort of practice two things together. And yeah.
Right. And it really kind of blows people's minds. Like, they're like, how do you do this? How can you do this? And I was like, well, there are cultures all over the world that have a multi-faith practice in essence, but it's like, yeah, whatever, we do this. and when I did my paper on it in seminary, Japan, I focused on Japan because there's a lot there, mainly Christianity, Buddhism, and Shinto kind of just coexist together.
Yeah, I mean, historically they didn't always get along so well. I think maybe in the modern era they do. In the modern era, you'd be hard pressed to find your average Japanese person who can say with absolute certainty whether something is Buddhist or Shinto, because the two are so mixed together now. They're pretty much inseparable. If you are interested in Shinto, you will end up, doing a little bit of Buddhism as well on top of that, probably. Yeah, so it's interesting to hear that you're Wiccan and Christian, because I'd say that those two religions are almost they're similar to the relationship between paganism and Shinto and Buddhism. You have one religion that is earth based and folk based, and then another religion that's has doctrines and is taught by a person. So yeah.
Yeah, and how do you see being like? How do you explain being multi-faith to other people? Like when you talk about being pagan and Shinto, like how do you explain that to other people? Because I know how I explain it. It'd be interesting. How do you explain your multi-faith?
Very often I don't. The Shinto thing I tend to keep quite. I'll only tell people about that if I know them very well, or if they're in the know, basically. A lot of the time I just find it easier to say I'm pagan rather than to say I'm Shinto pagan. But if we get into conversation, I'll say it. Yeah, I'm not really sure how I just say, well, I know a lot of. I don't think I know a single pagan who does practice one form of paganism with nothing else influencing it. So I suppose in my particular circle, it's not unusual to have, but yeah, and to people who are not in my pagan circle, they just wouldn't get it at all, so probably.
How do you overlap your paganism and your Shinto, and how do you? I guess basically the question is, how do you do your practice? How does it work?
Well, for one thing, I celebrate the Wheel of the Year, the 8 Sabbats, but on top of that, I'll celebrate the Shinto festivals as well. Where possible, I'll mix the two. So let's say, we have Ostara coming up, and that's preceded by the Japanese festival Hinamatsuri, which is the Dole festival. And there are some similarities in their symbolism. I see both of them as being quite feminine focused festivals. So the Ostara, the symbols are the egg, the hen, which are feminine, and then the Hinamatsuri is all about. It's often called Girls' Day in Japan. So you look for overlaps and you see how you can do it. In some cases, it's difficult to mix the two. I have 2 separate altars. Right now, I'm down in the basement, which is where my pagan altar is, and then in one of the spare bedrooms upstairs, I've got my Shinto altar. So the 2 of them are separate, and I'll treat them differently.
Mm-hmm. I do a similar thing because the way I explain it to people is that they overlap. They don't necessarily mix. Like, there's a lot of interfaith people who tend to try and mush things together. And my personal belief is that, when you try to do that, you kind of muddy everything and it kind of becomes, mushy is the best way to describe it. I'm doing a lot of cooking lately, so that's kind of the metaphors I'm starting to use. But when I describe to people that they overlap, so like there are some things about Wicca that doesn't necessarily go with the Christian part of things, and there's a lot of stuff that does overlap. Do you find that true with your paths as well?
Definitely. I mean, the one thing that is that, well, there's a couple of things I can think of that don't overlap particularly well. One is the attitudes towards death. I'd say that paganism has a fairly positive view. It's, death is a natural part of things, and you can celebrate death at Samhain in a way that it's just a part of the whole cycle, and the same as life is. Whilst in Shinto, death is quite taboo. So I wouldn't go putting skulls and things on my Shinto altar. That just wouldn't be appropriate. So those things I keep separate. But I think you're right. Some things there's a lot of potential to overlap. I was just thinking a couple of days ago, I held a little solo ritual because it was a full moon. And I combined that with a Shinto purification ritual. Because it's near this Hinamatsuri, one of the old traditions of Hinamatsuri is to use paper dolls, which you rub on yourself, and that takes away the impurity. So I thought, well, let's combine that with the full moon celebration. I can do that together. Because I thought, well, those two go together very well. I would say that most pagans would call that kind of thing witchcraft. So, so where you can mix them, I do. It comes naturally. I don't normally think I need to put too much thought into it. It just seems to be natural what to mix and what to keep separate.
Yeah, I mean, I know for myself, once I kind of got over the okay, how do I do this? I had a little period of time where it's like, okay, what does this mean to me? How do I do this? But once I got to that, it's just like, oh, this is easy. All right, well, we're just going to do what we're going to do. Yay.
Yeah.
Do you get people who are kind of like, why are you doing this? What are you doing? I don't get it. Do you get that?
Well, I mean, like I said, I generally only tell people about it if I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a fairly positive response. I think anyone has said, "Why are you doing this?" I think my family are a little bit baffled by it all, but occasionally we don't talk about it so much. But I mean, it's no, but I mean, my dad actually was kind of very much part of the whole sort of pagan community anyway, because he used to own a shop that sold a lot of jewelry and a lot of items, and that would appeal directly to pagans. So he doesn't know a lot about it. And I think he is personally interested in it. He's not a practicing pagan, but he knows a lot about it. He's read a lot of things, so he's easy. I think he thinks it's quite cool. But yeah. No, I think my husband's very positive about it. It doesn't really question it at all. He's just like, yeah, you do this thing. I think it's really cool. Yeah, off you go.
Well, that's really cool. I know for myself, I got a lot of flack from some people, from some quarters. I mean, maybe not excessive amount of flack, but I do get flack from some quarters. I'll occasionally get the email where, with this long essay from some fundamentalist Christian saying how it's so horrible and evil,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of funny. I pass them along to our Coven email list for their amusement.
Well, I haven't had anything like that yet, so touch wood.
How does Shinto deal with some of the issues of the day, like gay marriage and that kind of thing?
That's an interesting question. Gay marriage. The way that Shinto deals with it is that it doesn't deal with it at all. I'd say that Shinto has absolutely nothing to say on the subject. He's got nothing to say on sexuality whatsoever. So basically, the way I look at it, the kami, the spirits, really don't care what we get up to in the bedroom. So it's not so much of an ethical tradition, really. It doesn't have a lot to say. I'd say you look at Buddhism for certain ethical guidance on whether this is right or whether that is right. And the main ethical point, if there is one of Shinto, is the idea of purity, and that certain actions cause impurity, that then you can purify yourself. I think that's the basis of sort of the Shinto idea of ethics. Which I don't know if it applies to a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, gay marriage, it really has nothing to say. I mean, it's a different matter entirely thinking about of Japanese society, but that's not necessarily related to Shinto. So,
So, do you still study about Japan? Is that something
Oh
you
yeah.
still
Oh
do
yes.
work in?
Yes, I work in the field of Japan-UK relations at the moment, encouraging people to study Japanese and what have you. So yeah, I'm still very much into it, and I read a lot. I'm still very much keen on Japan. So yeah, it's not going to stop. I know that even if I stopped doing Japan as my career, I know I would still be probably doing it. Wouldn't be able to separate myself from Japan. It is kind of part of my identity now. I went to first time I went to Japan. I was 19, so and I'm 30 now, or 31. So it's a long time. So it does feel like a part of my identity, very much.
So, what's it like being in Japan? Because I'm gonna just totally nerd out on this because I'd be interested to know, what kind of experiences, like your spiritual experiences in Japan, because I know you said that you didn't really start practicing until you came back to the UK, but what kind of sparked that kind of thing while you're in Japan?
Yeah, Japan really was the thing that sparked it, really, even though I didn't realize it until I came back, because I came away with the impression that Japan, in some ways, has the healthiest attitude to religion in the world. It's something that is both a part of everyday life and not at all. It's possibly, they've got a very good balance of being very keen on the ritual, really keen on going to the shrines, but on the other hand, not worrying about it too much, not worrying about the whys and wherefores. They just do. I've got the strong impression that people do religion in Japan because they enjoy it, because they want to do it, because it feels right, and because it bonds you with the community and it's part of a tradition. They don't really think about whether, well, do I believe in this? Do I really think that the kami are there? I don't think most people worry about that. It's not an issue. And when I discovered that, that really opens up something to me, because I think possibly because I used to be a Catholic, my idea of religion is you can't be religious unless you absolutely believe in something, unless you have faith, unless you absolutely believe the gods exist. That's what I thought. And I thought, well, to be honest, I'm not sure. I'm quite a scientific person. How can I possibly reconcile spirituality with also believing in science? And Japan sort of had the answer to that, and the answer was, well, it doesn't matter. It's just just follow it because you enjoy it, and then the rest will come. Then you'll start to really think about what it does mean to be looking at the world from a scientific point of view and from a spiritual point of view. And it's, at the end of the day, it's all about how you personally feel. I think it's all about what you personally gain from that religion. If you're not gaining from a religion, if it's not a positive impact on your life, then you're doing it for the wrong reasons, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, because it's like, if you, I really like that idea, because it's like, for me, it's like, it doesn't really matter to me what other people are practicing, because I'm doing my own practice and it's making me feel good and it's helping me in my life and it's making me not go, not be too crazy in the world, that kind of thing. And, and if other people don't like it, ultimately it doesn't really matter to me if what other people think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as I said, you're into interfaith. I think that's the basis of interfaith, is that realization that faith is a personal thing. I think if unless you sort of consider religion in that way, it's hard to make interfaith work. That's what I really think. And that's how you can get on so well with people of other religions, is respecting that it is a really personal thing to somebody, and isn't that's what I think.
Well, and I also respecting that it's just different, that the people with another religion, a religion different than you, it's just a different religion. It's not like, it's not going to make you believe in the devil or something, it's not going to convert you. They're not going to convert you instantly, unless someone's trying to proselytize to you,
No, I've never met anyone in interfaith who wants to convert anyone. It's great, because people are there for the same reasons I am. They're there because they're interested in other religions. They really want to learn about other religions, and they like their own religion too, and they want to share that with other people and find, similarities or interesting differences, or take something. That to me is interfaith dialogue. It's all about that.
Mm-hmm. And I wish people would understand that more. Like, even if they don't understand somebody else's religion, I wish they would understand that, they're practicing that. That's making them happy. It's making them feel good. It's doing good. They're doing good in the world. Leave them alone.
I think in the UK, there's very much the word religion is a bit scary for a lot of people. I'd say that the British are probably some of the least religious people in the world, and that's a lot of that is because people don't like the word religion. I think that's one of the reasons why the New Age movement took off so well in the UK, because it was almost a replacement. It was like, well, we're not calling it a religion, we're calling it spirituality, even though it was pretty much the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, it was a more. I mean, I'd say that the New Age movement in a way was a folk religion, because it didn't have an overall organisation behind it. It was just a collection of beliefs that sort of grew up among people. So in a way, it's a contemporary folk religion, and that's why I think it took off. And it still is pretty popular in the UK. You have every high street has some kind of shop selling crystals and what have you. So I'd say you're more likely to find that than a Christian bookstore. And part of it is the slight fear that people have for religion, and particularly at the moment, with what's going on in the world, people are a bit wary about it. So it's, if you say, I'm a religious person, people are a bit, not sure about that. So I'd like to see people, people be less scared of that word religion.
Yeah, I think so too, and also because a lot of the religious terminology is deemed Christian, and when actually that terminology can be used for anybody. Like, I am a priest, and and I am religious in that sense. But what people automatically think, and I know it's especially true here in the U.S., is like what people automatically think is that, oh, you're religious, well, you must be one of those.
Yeah. Yeah, at the same time, I can't say with all certainty that I wouldn't judge somebody either if they said I'm religious. I would assume, so you're very, very Christian then. I'd probably assume that. So I think it's just natural prejudice. So yeah, we're all guilty of that.
Right. Well, I mean, I know I went through my phase too. Like, I had, when I was first converting to Wicca, actually, I had my phase of like being angry at Christianity for a bit, which I got over, obviously. But I think everybody kind of, I think, especially in the West. I mean, I don't know so much in the East, but there is that the automatic assumption that if you're talking about religion, you're automatically talking about Christianity, which is not always true.
I mean, that's interesting. Going back to Japan again, that is very often you do get that. The word for religion in Japanese is shukyo, and that kyo at the end means teaching. So Buddhism is bukkyo, Christianity is Christokyo, Islam is Islamkyo, but Shinto is Shinto. It's a completely different ending.
Interesting.
Yeah, and and I think that's part of the reason why the Japanese don't see that consider themselves Shintoists is in a way it's the word kyo, kind of, that shukyo implies a sect. It implies belonging to a particular type of religion, and following the teachings, which is kyo. So that could well be one of the reasons why, I'm not really a Shintoist, because I'm not part of a sect, even though I go to shrines and I go to festivals and I do a lot of Shinto things. So I think there is quite a similar feeling towards the word shukyo as there is in Western countries with the word religion. Is that in people's minds it refers to a particular type of religion. So I think religion is in the broadest sense, it's a belief in, for want of a better word, the supernatural.
Mm-hmm. That's really fascinating that they really make a distinction between what a teaching is and Shinto. I find that really fascinating.
I mean, Shinto, the Tor at the end, that's, you'll probably know from Taoism, it's the word way. So it's the same Chinese character of Tao, which means way. So Shinto literally means the way of the gods. And that to is also the same one. It's the same character used in judo, which is the judo, the gentle way, or chado, the way of tea, so tea ceremony. There's lots of doors, but when you see the word door, it refers to an art or a skill or a technique. So in a way, Shinto, rather than being classified as a religion and teachings, is being classified as an art form almost, a technique in a way. And that is very true when you're practicing it. A lot of it is about technique and what you're doing and how you're doing it. So,
well, that's really fascinating, because I've kind of actually described witchcraft that way to a lot of people. Like, for me, like, my reverence of deity, which is specifically like Jesus and the other god, and Hecate and the Dagda, which are the other gods that I work with, that's my religious belief and practice. But then there's also the craft of witchcraft. And so it just seems really fascinating that to have that a similarity with Shinto in that way.
I never thought of that. It is called witchcraft, and you could say that craft is very much analogous with Daw, with the way. So it's witchcraft, the way of the witches. Maybe there's an even deeper link here.
Yeah. Well, because there is a distinct difference, at least in my opinion, because there's the stuff you do as a witch to do like spells and things, however you do spells and things. I happen to use herbs and essential oils and things like that, and charms and things. So, but that's like all a skill that I've had to cultivate over time. So that's really fascinating. I'm kind of nerding out about it, but it's really fascinating.
Yeah, I've got to say, I never thought of that actually. As witchcraft almost being a Tao. It's a way. It's what the Japanese would call a way, a technique, an art. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting when it's always interesting when I get pushback on certain things, because sometimes people are like, no, that's not true. And I'm just like, like we were saying before, it's like, why are you getting bent out of shape about this?
Yeah, but sometimes with Shinto you have to be careful. It has a slight more of a level of organisation than paganism. Paganism has virtually no organisation. If you try to organise paganism, it just doesn't.
It's herding cats.
Yeah, exactly. While Shinto does have, it does have an organisation and structures and a priesthood. So there is you have to be a little bit more careful with what you're doing publicly. What you're saying about Shinto, because you will get people say, well, you're misrepresenting it. Particularly as I'm not Japanese, that's always a bit of an issue. So
right.
You have to be a little bit more careful. In my personal practice, I may well do things which are not usually the done thing in Shinto, but that's my my personal thing. But right. when I'm sort of showing Shinto to the world, I'll try to be a bit more orthodox.
Do people actually talk to you about cultural appropriation?
Yes. Well, they didn't until I joined the Pathos web community. I didn't know this, but it sounds like there was a bit of a discussion whether or not to let me in, because there was a concern that it might be seen as cultural appropriation, which is fair enough. That is a fair concern. I don't really I don't really have that many accusations of a cultural appropriation or anything. I think with Japan and with Shinto, it's the whole situation's a little bit simpler than it might be with other religions, because, well, for one thing, Shinto is very syncretic anyway. It's already mixed a lot with Buddhism and things. So the Japanese generally don't seem to be worried about that. And we don't have any particular political issues with Japan that might affect how it's seen if a European or an American takes on Shinto. I don't think there's any underlying animosity or anything else or any. So I think with the case for non-Japanese practicing Shinto, it's a little bit easier. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, just from talking to you here, you're not claiming it as something that, you're not claiming it as yours in the sense of, like, I am the all-knowing expert.
Oh
This is
no! I'm still learning. I'm still like,
right.
I sometimes feel a bit kind of awkward talking about it. It's like, well, am I sure this is? I still am very much learning about it. I mean, I obviously when I was in Japan, I learned about it passively and by participating. And now I'm reading about it, and a lot more than I used to. On my doing my Japanese studies degree, I learned a lot about it that way. But I still feel there's so much more to learn. I'm still sure that I do discover all the time that there's things I've possibly got slightly wrong. And I'm like, oh, okay, well then you correct that, and that's fine. But I definitely wouldn't say I'm an expert in it at all.
Right. Are you planning to go back to Japan with and kind of putting an eye towards looking at it through the more of the Shinto lens that you've acquired so far?
I'd love to do that. I would love to do that. I would be, I would. It's. I mean, if I can, I will. I don't know whether I'll ever get the opportunity through work. I mean, one of my colleagues did go to. It was interesting. She did go to Japan 2 years ago as part of work, and she went to visit Fushimi Inari Shrine, which is a very, very big shrine. It's a very important. It's in Kyoto, and it's a shrine to the deity Inari Okami, who is pretty much my patron deity. And because I knew she was going to this particular shrine, I said to her, "Look." I gave her an envelope with some Japanese yen. I said, "Can you just give this can you put this in a donation box?" And she was like, "Why?" I was like, "Can you just?" I didn't actually.
Right.
She knows a little bit more about me now. She knows I'm sort of practicing Shinto paganism now. But yeah, I was a bit envious that she got to do that. She got to go to Fushimi. I have been myself, but it would have been lovely to go again, particularly with me actually practicing Shinto now. But yeah, I was really glad that I could do that passively. She was really great. I mean, she actually brought me some things back from the shrine, and she left a torii gate. That's like I don't know if you know the torii gates, the little red gates. You can offer them as you can basically buy one and then offer it to the kami there, and she used some of the money that I gave her and to offer that. So yeah.
Oh, that's very
I should probably explain actually that giving money to shrines is a really normal thing. This is part of being of Shinto, is that one of the ways that you honour the kami is by sort of paying for the upkeep of the shrine. So it's a normal thing to give money at shrines.
Yeah, I was just realizing, oh yeah, we probably should explain that to people.
Yeah, that's like what that was about, yeah.
Yeah, because I've learned a lot about that just because, and I was just like, oh yeah, I know about that, but maybe other people won't.
No, this is also where you get that level of organisation to it as well. Is that it is quite money orientated. It's like the Shinto shrines do operate like businesses in a way, and we're talking quite big money a lot of the time, because particularly the deity Inari is very much associated with business and commerce. So you will have Japanese companies that will go to a lot of expense to make big offerings to shrines. They'll buy the large torii gates, and they'll have their company name written on them. So it's, in a way, it's a form of sponsorship, but it's also, I think it is deeply rooted in this idea that, it's we've been blessed with good profits, so therefore we should thank the kami and hope that the kami continues to bless us in this way. I think there is a deep belief behind that too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it makes sense because it's the one sacrifice that's kind of readily available too.
Yeah, that's true.
It's important. Money is important to life and to yourself and to your well-being. So, I'm doing a working right now where I'm honoring my deities and for Lent, and one of the things is that I have a jar of quarters that I'm placing at the crossroads for Hecate on the quarter moons, and I was just like, is quarters okay? And she's like, well, it's money and it's important to you and it's important to your culture. So yes, it is enough of a sacrifice because it's important. So I get that.
Yeah, I mean, I have my shrine to Inari upstairs, and it's like you would see at a Shinto shrine. There is a little money collection box, and I put change in there every now and then. What I often do is, if I find money on the street, I'll see that as a sign, actually, very often, that he's looking out for me because I've found like a coin on, and I'll pick it up and I'll put that in as well. So I'll offer it back. And on top of that, I'll try to make donations to sort of relevant charities when I can. So either if there's, one of the charities I like to donate to is called the Fox Project, which sort of helps injured foxes in the local area. And the reason why I particularly donate to that one is because foxes are the messenger of Inari. So that's I think that's a very appropriate charity to give to. So every now and then I'll make a donation to them.
That's very cool. So you mentioned you write on Pathos. What is your blog about? And
it's called Pagan Tama. Tama or Tamashi is the Japanese word for soul. Tama can also mean jewel. It has quite a lot of meanings in Shinto. So that you can roughly translate it as being pagan soul. And it's about being a Shinto pagan, about sort of, my thoughts and feelings as a Shinto pagan. Not everything is about paganism, not everything about Shinto. But sometimes it will just be sort of my worldview. But I think that my worldview is shaped from having this two-way path. So,
What does Shinto actually look like in Japan? What is it like to go to a temple? Is the anime correct?
Yes, the anime is quite great. In particular, I would say anything by Miyazaki Miyazaki is just pure. It's wonderful because it's so many films are an interpretation of Shinto. But yes, so if you go to a Shinto shrine, if you go to one of the big ones, they'll generally be outdoors, and so the main sort of body of the shrine will be a very small building that you won't be able to go into. But there will be a offertory box very often and a bell. And so you go up to it. So on the entrance to the shrine, there's very often a little basin of water, and you use the water to purify yourself first. And you'll go up to the shrine, you ring the bell, and then you clap your hands twice, and then you make your prayers. But what I love about Shinto shrines, and sort of what I think links them so much to paganism, is the fact that they're very much in nature a lot of the time. The one I talked about earlier, Fushimi Inari, the shrine, it's the shrine itself is on a mountain, and then you go from the main shrine up the mountain, and there'll be little altars everywhere. There'll be little candles burning. So it's completely different to, say, going to a cathedral, which it's all man-made. And cathedrals are beautiful, but in a completely different way. You admire. When I go to a cathedral, I just admire the mason, the skill of the masons who built this thing, and the beauty of that. That's very admirable. But with a Shinto shrine, you just admire the stunning nature all around you, and you really do feel that there really is a spiritual presence. When you're in a mountain in the middle of the forest, and in Fushimi Inari Shrine, there's often lanterns. So if you're there kind of in the evening, the lanterns start lighting up, and it's incredibly magical.
Wow.
So yeah, the main focus, I think, of the Shinto shrines, which are sort of in more rural areas or in the country, is the nature itself. The shrines are a very small part of that, but the real spiritual presence is in nature.
I know.
You gotta go.
I know. I so want to, and I've seen so many pictures and videos of other people going to shrines, and it's just like they look so peaceful and quiet.
Yeah, they are. I mean, particular ones, as you further you go up the mountain, it gets quiet, but then you also start hearing different bird songs, particularly at an evening. You start hearing some really unusual bird calls, and you get a shiver because it's just such a weird and wonderful experience. Another place that I went to in Japan, which made an impression on me, was actually a Buddhist temple complex it's on a mountain called Mount Koya, and the main part of Mount Koya is a cemetery. I'm a bit of a goth, so I quite like cemeteries. And a cemetery it's just thousands and thousands of old graves in the middle of the forest.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's and again, I visited it sort of as the sun was setting, and again it's all lantern lit, and you go through. There's often the smell of incense, where people have been offering incense. So it's a very Buddhist thing, and the mist starts rising. So you're right on top of the mountain. I went in the summer, so it's still quite warm in the evening. And there's this particular complex, Koyasan, is sort of constructed around the belief that that one of the sort of the main figures of the founders of Shingon sect of Buddhism is going to come back in the future. That he's going to rise from the dead again. And when you're wandering around this shrine in the evening and this mist is descending, you really do feel like, wow, this could happen. You know, you do feel like, you know, if something like this, something so incredible is going to happen, it's going to happen here. Mm-hmm. It is amazing. It's amazing.
I was just thinking that it must be a really fascinating, just from a psychic vibe kind of point of view, because it's just like, it's so old, and then all of that history and stuff there, you must feel really loud and psychically. Yeah,
it does. It really, really does leave this big impression on you. I mean, Koya-san, Mount Koya really did. It's quite indescribable how incredible it feels, and I think that was definitely one of the big things that influenced me into then coming back. And then, you know, I probably missed that feeling. Actually, it's probably one of the reasons why I turned to paganism, is because, you know, I really need this feeling in my life. I really, you know, I need that.
Well, it's not always easy to find that when you finally come back home, or, you know, you're kind of in the normal space and mundane space of time. And
that's true. Although I think paganism sort of teaches you to try and appreciate it whenever you can. So, you know, when you're out in the forest, it's not just trees. It's, you know, there's something more to it than that. You know, it's a spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. So it just teaches you to really feel and appreciate nature.
Well, excellent. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time. Thank you for nerding with me. It's great. So if people wanted to ask you questions, or, wanted to visit your Patheos blog, what are the best ways to go about doing that?
Okay. So I'm just looking at the best URL now. I think if you go to patheos.com and then go to the Pagan channel, you'll find the blog through in the list there. Mm-hmm. So that's probably the best way of doing it.
Yeah. And if people wanted to contact you about Shinto and all and this stuff, would that just be best to go through Patheos?
You can email me. My email is Trelia, TRELLIA @gmail.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This has been really fascinating confirmation. Very fascinating conversation. Wow.
So, I just feel like there's so much more that we could talk about. But
yeah. Hang on.
That was really interesting. Really interesting to learn about your path as well.
Oh, thank you. I'd like to thank Megan for joining us on This Week in Heresy. You can subscribe to This Week in Heresy via iTunes, the Stitcher app, or the podcatcher of your choice. You can also financially support this podcast through patreon.com. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave me a message through Twitter @TWIH Podcast or on thisweekinheresy.com.